King of the Railway. So, King of the Railway is a mixed bag. Do you remember with bad writing with good animation? Well, you got the opposite, and here you have it. Now, to be honest, I actually don't mind the movie, it's just that I'm just not interested to it. It all contains into 4 story arcs and combine them in together to make as a full movie. That is a good concept, but it is kinda bland. The third arc is Gordon Spencer racing is just boring, but I do love the concept of Ulster Castle here. Restoring a castle from since a year ago, and to be honest, I actually kinda like this idea. We can add a castle to it, and I think it looks pretty good. It also between the narrow gauge line and the standard gauge line, which makes it a little bit more better and interesting. And it continues later on and takes some discoveries. Now we're getting to Millie. She's actually looks like a lady, but she's a narrow gauge engine with a whistle. And to be honest, I kinda like her here. I think she's actually a pretty decent character here. And nothing else. That's it. I also kinda like Jack Returns, but they also give him a redesign, and to be honest, I like his redesign here. I mean, it's not as good as the original, but I think it was kinda like too boxy like on his generator, I suppose. But I think it was pretty glad to see Jack Returns. I hope he gets more spotlights roles in the next movie season, I guess. And now we get into the king himself, Steven. And to be honest, he's actually a lot more enjoyable. He's a very enjoyable character, old and wise, just like Edward and Hero. I also liked his story arc here, even the song Searching Everywhere. But I didn't enjoy that song that much, because I would prefer to listen to some rock songs, aka Thomas, You're the Leader. But to be honest, Steven is a really great addition to the cast. And maybe one day, maybe he could be in the model series. But maybe it's just a theory though. Now, let's get into the biggest problems. The biggest problem is the animation. When they go through this spectacular, beautiful Nitrogen era start to the art productions, which is kind of start bland. It also did the same thing to season 17. Although, I do remember one music video that Percy was shunting trucks, and he seemed to be bouncing. But he bounced once. So I guess not a big of a deal, unlike Jeremy on Soda when James does the dancing. And I got nothing about this movie. It's just that, well, it's another Thomas film that actually exists. So I might give this movie a 5 out of 10. It's a good, decent movie, but it's just not for me. Tale of the Brave. I'm gonna say, Tale of the Brave is my favorite Brennan era movie. In fact, it was an improvement of King of the Railway. And I gotta say, it has a lot of action packed that I really enjoy. Bill and Ben got the most movie lines and plays the important role. And also, Thomas is not the main focus here. In fact, Percy got his main focus, and to my surprise, he actually did a lot better than Day of the Diesels did. The reasons why I really enjoyed this movie because of Percy. It feels like a classic series Percy with season 5 and the Nitrogen era combined together. That he realized that sometimes he may be scared, but he also had to sacrifice for his bravery and his heroic. That's what Gator told him, and to be honest, I really love this mold. It means like Thomas and Edward all over again. And I really thought Percy did change a lot recently. Maybe Percy changed a lot, and instead of being the youngest one, he soon get used to be more older, just like Thomas did, as a young adult like Thomas. And I think the reasons why I may use it for Soldier Red Mist because it takes place during Soldier Red Mist where Percy and Kira peace. And I actually put effort to their two stories combined together, to their relationship and to their, well, pair. And I actually love these two to make them, well, more interesting and more fun and enjoyable. Now let's talk about Gator. Gator is hands down my favorite Brand Era character. Well, even though he doesn't do anything, I'm just glad that Gator doesn't stay in the show for long because he actually, well, went back home like Hero did. It's basically like Hero and Edward combined together. And to be honest, I think Gator is probably my favorite Brand Era character. Now let's get the antagonist, the Rusty Red himself, James. He wasn't even more threatening in Tobias and the Archive Machado, but to be honest, he actually plays the antagonist role, and, well, the first time ever one of the main cast is playing the antagonist role. But he does apologize at the end, and to be honest, I like that. It shows that James actually does care of his friends, but sometimes his pride could get into trouble. I bet James may stay like this for the rest of the Boba era, and he'll never change, because James will always be the same as usual. Another thing that I really adore this movie is Gator and Percy's dynamic. It's basically Thomas and Edward's dynamic all over again, and to be honest, I think it works. Thomas has Edward and Percy has Gator. And Gator just actually have a reason to leave Soldier, unlike Edward. And to be honest, I actually like this movie as a whole. And fun fact, the episode Toad's Bright Idea took place during the movie. The reason why is because Oliver was broken down, and Gator has to take the train, and the same scene was reused from Tale of the Brave. That was a really good story arc. I know this may be an unpopular opinion of my headcanon, but maybe Tale of the Brave took place between Thomas and the twin engines. So, I think this could have been a story arc about Thomas and Percy's James story arc dilemma. And that's pretty much it all I had to say about this movie. In fact, this is my favorite Brand Era movie, and my favorite Brand Era character. And to be honest, I actually enjoy this movie. It's a shame that we never see this dynamic again, but to be honest, I think this movie is worth a watch to everyone who really adores the Railway series. So, I'll give Tale of the Brave 9 out of 10. My favorite movie that has everything was right, and to be honest, I think it was worth it. The adventure begins. This has got to be Thomas's biggest year yet. For 2015, and I gotta say, the 6th anniversary went out with a bang. I mean, look at it! They did an amazing job! It looks like it was brought as a Pixar film. Now, let's get into the amazing stuff. Thomas over here looks amazing! I really love his design from his original livery when he first came to Sodor. In the classic series, Thomas was just painted as a model for a weird reason. But in the CGI, It makes sense. So that's a plus. Another thing they like is they changed some of the Rarely series adapts to make it a lot more better. And I gotta say, this looks a lot better than the classic series and the Rarely series. I think this could have been the pilot for Season 0 if it had Edward's Day Out included inside. Now let's get into James. I really love his original livery here. It looks similar in the Rarely series book. And I gotta say, I think they went for a really nice choice. Since James was painted black in the Rarely series, it makes sense for him to keep this way until the next season. But in the classic series, yeah, James is painted red for some weird reason. I don't know. Although there are some things which is not perfect or they need some changes, it's the fact, well, Henry's characterized is really poorly. It doesn't feel like in the classic series. If they have to change Henry's character and his shape, then it would make a better movie. And they need to fix him with shed since it has 7 births, meant to be 6. So, you didn't have time to change it, I guess. Another thing that I really enjoyed and really liked is Thomas's introduction to Annie and Clarabelle. And I gotta say, this is a really great idea. Maybe Thomas first reacted to coaches in the classic series. Maybe I can add this to my series. But maybe one day, I might have a chance to it. Now let's get into Thomas's character arc. Now, I actually really like Thomas's character arc in The Adventure Begins. I think he was betrayed in his Seasons 5 persona, instead of his Seasons 1 persona most of the time. He still has his cheekiness, but he also still have his own character, which we all knew and loved, unlike the Nitrogen era. Another thing that I really like this idea is to add a lot of details at the end. Something in the classic series that never do, when Sir Thomas talked to Edward that Thomas should stay in the yard. I really like this change. And the most famous scene is the runaway scene. And I gotta say, this is Season 5 action-packed here. Like the Great Discovery, Thomas didn't stand there like in the classic series. Instead, he decided to sacrifice to rescue James. That is a Thomas that we all knew and love. In fact, Thomas here was more brave and of course more heroic than ever, and I love it. And even though Thomas didn't succeed to rescue James, at least he tries to help. And I really love the end that Thomas actually did something to help James, even though he failed, at least he tries everything he could. And the best part? You think it ends here. Wrong. It went out of a shot in the face to show you all the Rarely series pictures in the ending credits. That is amazing! It truly shows The Adventure Begins really cares about the fans, and even, of course, the best way to celebrate the 7th anniversary, one of Thomas's biggest year yet. Now, I really love this movie, but I like The Great Discovery more. But this is actually could have been my second favorite, along with Blue Mountain Mystery and Hero of the Rails. I'll give this movie a high score like the same 3 movies, 10 out of 10. Alright, how many movies left? Okay, we seem to have probably a few more left, and oh, my next movie? Oh boy. Oh boy, this is... I'm going to receive a lot of hate from the fan base after I reviewed this. So, here we go. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. Yes. Everyone's favorite Thomas movie, and considered to be the best Thomas movie, right? Well, I'll get to that part. Everything else was so perfect, the writing is amazing thanks to Andrew Brenner, and everything else was so perfect, and this might have to be the worst Thomas movie to ever exist! Now let me get one more clear before I get shot in the face.
Whoa! What? It was obvious!
Now let me explain why I think it was the worst movie to exist. And before anyone's saying in the comments saying, wait, you can't hate Shoulders on the Ledge of the Lost Treasure, it's the best Thomas movie. Well, I don't want to break the news to you, but it's the opposite of best. So let me explain why. First of all, it's the characters. Thomas, Gordon, and Sir Pat. They all basically, well, hate it. Now, Gordon just only bark and not bite. But Thomas is the one who caused these problems. Tried to get scot-free. Well, that was the reasons why the movie was making Thomas and Gordon unlikable. Remember? United stand together we fall? Well, that was going thrown out the window, and instead we got back to square one. Not to mention, Sir Tom Pat was cruel to Thomas, but he has the right to be angry at Thomas because all the things what he did. My second problem is that they way use too much plot for a plot twist. I'm sorry, but all these references were already reused for the movie. The Great Discovery is infinity times better than this remake. Another problem is Thomas. He is such a whiny little engine. I just don't understand why. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Thomas in the classic hit era and the All Engines Go era. But this is not work for the movie because, well, he's went back to square one like the Nitrogen era Thomas did. Grow a brain, Thomas. Oh yeah, and not to mention a villain named Sailor John. To be honest, I don't care for him. He's actually a really okay villain in my book. In fact, he did play an amazing job with the character. But, to be honest, I just don't care for him. And also, finally, let me talk about the fans who like the movie. We've seen it multiple times on the internet and people who actually like this movie. Don't get me wrong, if you like the movie, that is fine. But for other Thomas fans, it's too overrated. I mean, it's too overrated. It's because it's already been done to death. I'm looking at you two in the list. And like the movie, these two characters were being talked to death as overrated, but at least they're a lot more tolerable than a Nitrogen Thomas 2.0 all over again. And I am going to be hated for this, but if you want more explanation why the movie is so atrocious and terrible, I highly recommend you only watch one video of Soldier Productions' Soldier's Legend of the Lost Treasure review. Now, I get it. I know everyone hates Soldier Productions, but in my opinion, I am natural to him. Now, I know sure how people hate Soldier Productions so much, but in my opinion, I am natural to him, and I could agree with his opinions. not much, but agreed with other opinions. And like Legend of the Lost Treasure, he's been hated already. Of course he causes drama, but just let him be and just do whatever he wants. Just don't hate him so much. It's already been done to death. Do something else besides hate him. Now, I know people's gonna disagree with me for this, but I'm sorry, but this is my opinion. This is my choice if I am natural to Soto Productions. Then some people hated him for no reason or a good reason. I'm sorry, people. I'm sorry. I know you're gonna hate me for this, but I do have a point. Just stop hating him and just do something else. So that is my Soto's Legend of the Lost Treasure review. And I'm sorry for everyone saying this, but I'll have to give this movie a negative score, a 0 out of 10. I know people's gonna hate me in the comments for this, but hey, opinions are opinions. Just accept it. The Great Race. Now, what are my thoughts about this movie? It's actually pretty decent. In fact, it was an improvement of Soto's Legend of the Lost Treasure. It doesn't feel like reusing the same plot, but it does reused, and it's already did this back earlier in season 11 Dream On, but I think if we think about it, about the movie that has a better execution, then maybe it might be worth it. Another really nice touch to it is the musicals. It's basically Thomas the Tank Engine, but musical, like movies and everything. And they did this 3 times. And I think actually thinks he was executed decently, with great songs and everything else. Another thing I like about it is the 3-part arcs combined to one. Like Thomas and Shima, Diesel trying to get into the Great Railway Show, and Gore and the Flying Scotsman's brother rivalry, and also a plot twist, Philip and Vinny. And I actually like these arcs, but it could be better if it focused on Thomas and Gordon, and that's pretty much it. And now I have to get to the negative parts. Some of the parts of the new engines, they were going to be reused in the Boba era. Well, that was a problem. The engines in the Railway Show barely did anything, except for the cameo characters who doesn't get speaking roles, except for Ashima and Vinny, and of course the Flying Scotsman. Well, okay, most of them. Another thing that I used to like, but I could see why it was unrealistic, and that being the bridge jump. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy and really love the bridge jump if it's executed well, because, well, it was marketing for sell toys, but to reality, it's just wrong. Just basically the comic or anything. But basically, Thomas had to take a lot of retakes to get back on the track, like 7 times to get to jump to a bridge in the right angle. Yeah, I hope Thomas will be okay from the film. Overall, The Great Race was actually a pretty decent movie, and a decent enough to be an enjoyable movie like Thomas and the Magic Railroad. It does have some negatives here and there, but I think this movie is the improvement of Dream On or other movies. I'll give this movie a decent enough score of 5.5 out of 10.